Booting up the microphone, waiting for the camera to boot up. There it is. Good morning, everybody. All right. So, oh, God. It's been funny. This morning we're going to talk about the new executive order designating Antifa officially as a terrorist organization. And some of the ramifications there. There's some good, there's some bad here. There's a lot that I'd rather see done, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little more. Uh, yeah, we covered this last week when Trump put out the Truth Social post right after the Charlie Kirk assassination, where he said this. I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I love that. I love that check. TPS says check the mic. Okay, correct. I have corrected the mic. Thank you. Thanks for catching that. That's so aggravating that it doesn't reliably do the same thing. Sometimes the mic comes on correctly and sometimes it doesn't. But nature of doing the show live. Live is hard mode, and I've got 5 microphones hooked up to this computer right now for different applications. Anyway, so we said at the time, and it was important to understand that it was just a tweet or just a post on Truth Social, right? The fact is, excuse me a moment. There we go. The fact is that when he posted that does not carry the weight of law of any kind whatsoever. But, like we said last week, this was likely a signal that there would be something more official, more substantial coming out in the next couple of weeks. And holy shit, here we are. So I know it's hard to believe the Charlie Kirk assassination was 2 weeks ago tomorrow. That the world has kind of rushed by in that time, it seems. But here we are on a first thing in the morning. Yesterday we got a legitimate come on. All right, guys, bear with me a second. It's going to do the thing. I hate to admit it, but there are some reliability issues with the Rumble Studio. But we're working on it. So, like I said, so yesterday we got the official executive order. Executive order dated September 22nd, designating Antifa. And this is my concern. I don't like this. Designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. I'll give a little more attention to that detail in just a moment here. But Section 1, Antifa as a terrorist. Wow, that's hard to read. There we go. Section 1 is Antifa as a terrorist threat. Antifa is a militarist, anarchist enterprise that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the United States government, law enforcement authorities, and our system of law. It uses illegal means to organize and execute a campaign of violence and terrorism nationwide to accomplish these goals. This campaign involves coordinated efforts to obstruct enforcement of federal laws through armed standoffs and law enforcement, organized riots, violent assaults on immigration and customs enforcement and other law enforcement officers, and routine doxing of and other threats against political figures and activists. Antifa recruits, trains, and radicalizes young Americans to engage in this violence and suppression of political activity, then employs elaborate means and mechanisms to shield their identities of its operatives, conceal its funding sources and operations in an effort to frustrate law enforcement and recruit additional members. Individuals associated with and acting on behalf of Antifa further coordinate with other organizations and entities for the purpose of spreading, fomenting, and advancing political violence and suppressing lawful political speech. This organized effort, designed to achieve policy objectives by coercion and intimidation, is domestic terrorism. Okay. All of that is true and correct except for this statement right here, that it's domestic terrorism. Let me disabuse you of that, right? This post from yesterday. Breaking: Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni rejects recognizing Palestine as a sovereign state. In response, Antifa riots in the streets, causing widespread destruction. Italian Prime Minister Meloni. Antifa is rioting. That sign says Treni on it, right? This is not America, right? What you're seeing here, this is video footage in Italy. Antifa rioting in Italy. You know, I can bring up examples like this all over the place of Antifa conducting their operations globally. Right? So here's what I want you to understand. The designation as a domestic terror group is a little weak. That said, I get what's happening. I do. And so let me explain it to you. Within the law, there are limitations on what we can do in the intelligence. There are limits on what we can do in the intelligence community, what we can do with law enforcement, etc. And as Cameron and I have discussed on the show before, rights, everybody has rights until you don't, right? There are circumstances under which even our laws, with the strongest protection of our individual civil liberties in the world, even our laws on occasion deem that a person has chosen voluntarily to surrender their rights, either in service of a contract or in punishment for an infraction. Examples are felons can't vote or own a firearm, and soldiers. Once you're enlisted in the U.S. military, or in theory holding any public office, you're voluntarily surrendering some of your free association rights, a lot of your free speech rights. Yeah. By the way, I've seen soldiers in uniform who are active duty or reserve on social media who have been celebrating Charlie Kirk and the death of Charlie Kirk. And there's been this whole rash of firings, teachers getting fired, et cetera. And I've seen people commenting under those posts that these soldiers should be fired for what they're commenting. No, a soldier should absolutely not be fired for celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. No, that is a specific infraction under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. They should be court-martialed and fucking imprisoned. That's not an opinion. That's the law. That's the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You do not, as a soldier, enjoy the free access, your total liberty. You have agreed by enlisting to curtail your access to some of your rights, not least of which are your rights to free political speech. You can't put your uniform on and go out and demand the overthrow of the government. We don't put up with that shit. So The case that I want to make about the domestic angle, Antifa is not even a Native American organization. Antifa did not begin in the United States. As we covered in detail the other day, Antifa rose up. It's a communist organization that rose up against the Nazi Party. And that's a thing that's worth understanding. You've heard the old saw, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. No. No, I want y'all to get that shit out of your head right now. Just throw that away. Correctly understood, the enemy of my enemy can be a valuable strategic asset. Right? If I know that I am faced with an enemy who is currently fighting a war on two fronts, I am one of those fronts, and another enemy is their other front. The fact that I can strategically maneuver my enemy into the waiting jaws of their other enemy is strategically and tactically useful. That does not make the other enemy my friend. Right? And think about it like this. You are staring down a mountain lion in front of a bear's cave. And you've got some trick you can pull. Maybe you don't have a clean shot, but your loud gun might scare the mountain lion enough to make him run back toward the bear's cave, where the bear eats the mountain lion. Right? That's tactically useful. That's strategically effective. But other than the fact that the bear has just had a decent meal, nothing has changed that the bear will also eat you. So get the enemy of my enemy shit out of your head right now. There is no quarter. There is no defense. There is no grace affordable to people like Antifa. And it may be an unpopular thing to say, but people need to pay attention because these are the facts. The communists have always been worse than the Nazis. Nazis were bad. Communists, it's not that the communists were worse than the Nazis, right? We've got to clarify that. We've got to get this through people's heads. The Nazis were bad. Past tense. They do not exist in a meaningful way now. The communists are bad. And it's not just that they are bad, they are still worse than the Nazis were. For example, the USSR may have fallen, may be over. Mao's Chinese Communist Party is still the ruling party in China. They are still harvesting organs from the Falun Gong. They are still putting Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. And they're doing it in larger numbers than the Nazis ever dreamed of. And to be very clear, Antifa is a communist organization that was stood up by the same communists that were the collaborating axis of evil during World War II. We wiped out the Nazis. We did not wipe out all the communists. And that's who Antifa is. Antifa is the guerrilla warfare arm, the faith militant of the Communist Party. They always have been. So the black bloc operatives that we deal with here in the United States, they are not some new organization that has taken up the banner of a long dead theory. No, it's still just the fucking communists. So Antifa are not domestic terrorists. They are foreign terrorists. They are a terror organization. Antifa, legally, tactically, strategically, politically, Antifa is the same kind of entity as Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Well, okay, that's not fair. ISIS is a little different than Al-Qaeda, but they're the same sort of an entity as Al-Qaeda, as Boko Haram, as in any number of those. Jay Helms joins us from Madison Township, Ohio. I saw a couple new names from all watching on YouTube up here earlier. Beaver, good to see you. Good to see you. So, and Sergeant Major says the CIA needs to do its job. God, I wish they would. I wish they would. And yeah, Sergeant Major says totalitarian governments are all terrible for the people. Yep. Sure enough. Pitt Danny mentions Sinclair will not air Kimmel on its 30 stations, including DC. And yeah, so I'm going to talk about that a bit on. I think we'll see what happens. We're still developing the deep dive for this Saturday, and I think I'll talk about. I want to see how the Jimmy Kimmel thing unfolds over the next couple days, because apparently he's coming back, but Sinclair's gonna preempt him and not let him air. So yeah, we'll see how that works. But let me get back around to the regular topic now that I've said some good mornings and some acknowledgments. Pitt Danny, I think you're correct. The FBI and the CIA still are not under the control of the president. There's still a lot of rogue operatives there who are a real problem. So let's get to section 2 here. Designation as a domestic terrorist organization. Because of the aforementioned pattern of political violence designed to suppress lawful political activity and obstruct the rule of law, I hereby designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. All relevant executive departments and agencies shall utilize all applicable authorities to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle any and all illegal operations, especially those involving terrorist actions, conducted by Antifa or any person claiming to act on behalf of Antifa, or for which Antifa or any person claiming to act on behalf of Antifa provided material support, including necessary investigatory and prosecutorial actions against those who fund such operations. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, it means that with the domestic terror designation, that a lot of new law enforcement tools and intelligence clandestine operations tools are made available to our law enforcement apparatus. Things like we can now tell X, Facebook, etc., that they have to turn over the private communications of lawfully designated members of the terrorist organization, because, well, it means that we can do that. The reason that we would do that is because Antifa has famously used social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, Signal, etc., for communication security, for ComSec, so that they can conduct operations. They'll use like things akin to a Facebook Messenger group or DMs on Twitter, etc., to decentralize, obfuscate, and encrypt communications to organize riots, to organize firebombing police stations, and to recruit. Now, one of their most effective recruiting mechanisms is they'll organize peaceful protests, and then they'll have a few agents provocateur in the crowd. So you'll have 1,000 shithead students who don't know anything about anything, but just heard, hey, we're protesting the Nazi. And they all show up with their little picket signs. And then one of them shows up and throws a concrete milkshake at a police officer, and 100 of them get arrested. And then you'll have your 2 or 3 in there that they went there to get arrested on purpose so that they can find themselves sitting in a jail cell with a bunch of, 20, 21, 22-year-old co-eds, college students, idiots. And they can sit there and belch poison in their ears. Yeah, man, this is what happens. This is the man keeping you down, man. It's super American to organize against the government. You should come to our rally. Nothing official, nothing big. It's just, we're gonna get together and talk. And that's the pipeline, right? That's the pipeline. That's how they recruit. Now, and that's to say nothing of the government officials. Many government officials who have gone out of their way to declare themselves to be pro-Antifa, or even to say things like, we are all Antifa now. We are all anti-fascist now. And it sounds, it's one of those, I'll give it to them. They studied the work of Edward Bernays very carefully. They learned their Russell conjugation. And anti-fascist, hell yeah, everybody should be anti-fascist. Like the other day, I showed you the tweet from that shithead, the child abusing crack addict, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, who basically put up a portrait, a photograph of soldiers landing on the beach at Normandy, and he said every one of these men was an anti-fascist. These were all Antifa, there to fight fascists. It amazes me. Guys, we have nearly a whole generation of Americans today who think that the Nazis were fascists. The only thing the Nazis and the fascists had in common with one another is the same thing that the Nazis and the fascists and the communists and the American Democratic Party have in common with one another. They're all Marx-ass tricks. They're Marxists. That's the through line. Timonian says, I figured fascism is embedded in socialism. It's the other way around. Okay, so, well, we need to do this. We need to do one of these. We need to do this for one of the deep dives. But broadly, Nazism is German socialism. It is a particular brand of socialism that was introduced in Germany. Communism is essentially East Asian socialism. That's Russia, China, right? And it bled down into the Polynesians, right? Fascism actually predates Nazism, right? With Mussolini selling socialism in Italy. In every case,
What it is the concentration of the control of all material wealth into an established governmental organization, right? And the end goal is that the people do not get paid to work. Rather, the government provides all of your food, shelter, clothing, right? So it's national plantation, right? You got one entity, the government, that owns all the property, and every home, every person that is not a part of the government lives in what amounts to a farmer's slave quarters. This is why you hear all this stuff about live in the pods and eat the bugs, right? A socialist country is a nation full of slaves who subsist on the minimum necessary input for a person to live. You become a slave, and you might get a new pair of shoes every year, just like the slaves did, just like the slaves in America did, and there will be a house for you to sleep in. It doesn't mean it'll be a good house. In fact, it'll likely eventually be a bunk house if you're, or you'll just have the pod. You will eat the slop. Sergeant Major asks, is the word fascist in the giant dictionary I gave you? I think fascist is, because that dictionary is from 1911, and the word fascist is from, it's the very, very late, it's like 1896 or 97. But yeah, it's there. So let me back up. Okay, so let me get back to this now. So I think I've made the case that Antifa should be designated as a terror group generally, not a domestic terror group, because it is an international organization. That makes it a foreign terror threat. Anybody wearing that Antifa flag patch on their backpack, on their shirt, waving an Antifa flag, should be treated as a hostile foreign combatant. They should be treated as a foreign combatant. Even when you're talking about an American citizen, we can give Obama a lot of shit, and I will continue to, and he should show enough spend some time in prison for the bombing of less so Anwar al-Awlaki, more so his kid. But Obama just straight up bombed those people. But here's the fact: Anwar al-Awlaki was a member of a foreign enemy organization, and moreover, as I was describing a minute ago with the agents provocateur organizing campus protests and then going in and throwing the milkshake, throwing the Molotov cocktail to get everybody arrested. Often those agents provocateur are foreign nationals, right? We saw it a lot during 2020, where the protesters that were actually throwing firebombs and stuff, a lot of them were American citizens, but there were more than a few that were Italian, French, etc., that were foreign agents, right? And now that we've got this designator, so back up, I'm not happy about the tag domestic attached here, because it limits it doesn't just limit the tools available to the investigators and the prosecutors to go after these organizations. It limits the scope of the investigation. Now, here's the good news. Here's the Let me get one. Here's the white pill. It allows the investigations to begin, and this is something we're going to be watching out for. And mark my words, I think by this time next year, at the latest, these investigations will offer the evidence and will make the maneuver, and they will remove the domestic qualifier from the designation, and we will see that Antifa gets designated as a terror group, an international terror group, a foreign terror group, because they are. This is, it is known. We have known this. We have shown this, right? This show, just compiling the data that we can assimilate from news analysis, and some whistleblower accounts, we have been able to show over the years that Antifa is a well-funded, well-organized, cellular, international terrorist organization. And that's, so yeah, basically what's going to happen, Sergeant Major and Pitt Danny are pointing it out. Yes. So yeah, the involvement of the CIA is essentially going to have to be hands off as long as they're a domestic terror group. But once the FBI, if Kash Patel can get his shit together, rein them in and start deleting some of these useless fucking rogue agents that are actively working against the interests of the American people, then if the FBI can run down the investigation and prove the connection internationally, which should not be difficult to do, I can do it. I mean, I can hand you the evidence that says here's the connection. Let's go. Then the domestic designator drops off, and we can unleash the bulldog that is the CIA. And we start mopping these sons of bitches up across the planet. Y'all, I would re-enlist today to go hunt Antifa. If I could get the U.S. Army to let me hunt Antifa the way I used to hunt the Taliban and Al Qaeda, I would never be able to roll out of bed under my own power again. That I would be hard as Chinese algebra until I ran out of bodies to stack. Because I put my hand up. All enemies, foreign and domestic. And for those of you who have never, it was it Whitman that said was it Whitman or Longfellow? Dad, remind me, it was Whitman or Longfellow. He said, for a man who has ever hunted armed men and found that he has a taste for, you know what? I'll find the quote. Who said when a man has hunted armed men? Let's see if Chat GPT can. Hemingway. Hemingway said it. In Green Hills of Africa, 1935, Hemingway says, "Certainly there is no hunting like the hunting of man, and those who have hunted armed men long enough and liked it never care for anything else thereafter." That's probably hard for most of you to really grok, to really grapple with. I see a few names in the chat right now who I know to have the requisite experience to understand that quote. But I'm here to tell you it is truer than you can possibly imagine. No, Kate. Yeah. Kate says they need to put bounties on them. You know what they need? You know what they need? We need to make it like an Uber, right? You download an app and it just has the list. Just has a list of Antifa targets, confirmed Antifa target, bounty $1,500. I'll take that one, and then I just hop in the truck and go knock it out, right? Then you take a picture of the body like you just dropped off some DoorDash to prove you made the delivery. Take your picture, hit the button, and they PayPal you your $1,500. Pitt Danny says Purple Scouts, and brother, I'm here for it. That'd be fucking brilliant. That's it right there. You publish the app, right? And when you want to sign up, you submit to a background check. You go, hey, I'm a real American hero. I'm ready to play ball. Yeah, right. You submit for the background check. I've got gigs where I had to go to the the sheriff's office and put in for the background check to make sure I don't have a history of burglary or some shit like that, so that I can get read on for access codes. There's these real estate agents use these lock boxes called Supra, and it's not you got the old school contractor lock box where you got the little thumb wheels. The Supra lock box, there's no outside anything on it. You have to have a smartphone with the app on it, and you have a PIN code, and then you have to get a Supra, what they call a CBS code from the agent. You got to go. So yeah, just do the background check, and then deputize 100,000 cranky old American Army veterans, Marine Corps veterans, maybe even some squids. Probably not the chair force. It's just not up there. They're not ready for it. But you're roughnecks, and suddenly y'all will sleep so soundly in your beds at night as rough men do violence on your behalf. Because that, my friend, that is what makes the world go round. That is what makes civilization, the lie of civilization, a lie that we can continue to tell ourselves, is that while soft men sleep peaceably in their beds at night, rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. And buddy, I miss doing violence on your behalf. So you guys have a great day. Sleep well tonight, knowing that rough men do stand ready to do violence on your behalf. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.